The Caribbean islands are located in the tropics. Countries within this region are washed by the waves of the Caribbean Sea. The Caribbean region has an extensive history dating from the era of the nomads and Taínos through to the period of European conquest. The Caribbean region includes more than the 16 countries presently associated with CARICOM. The Caribbean region has a history which could be referred to as inclusive. However, several cultural practices within this region differ. In 1492 Spain authorized Christopher Columbus and his crew to set sail towards an unfamiliar trade route. Their objective on their first venture in this direction at sea, was to identify a new trade route to sections of Asia. This exploration led to the discovery of Western civilization. It is at this time the change in the face of socio-cultural heritage began for the majority of the Caribbean islands. The conquest of the islands of the Caribbean, also referred to as the West Indies, led to the establishing of Spanish culture in several islands within this region. The rapid conquest of the West Indies by the Spaniards and the talk of the expansion of Spanish rule within this region attracted other European powers like the Britain, Netherlands, and France. They took the initiative to fight the Spanish for some islands claimed by them as their colonies. All listed European countries above sought a share in the Caribbean. Today sections of the Caribbean still reflect their influence. Countries like Cuba and Puerto Rico remained under the control of the Spanish. Guadeloupe, French Guiana, and Martinique is considered French or French Creole. Aruba, the Netherlands Antilles, Curaçao and Saba are of Netherland influence or remain under their rules. The British Empire controlled the majority of the islands found in the Caribbean. Today this has not changed. Countries like Jamaica, Barbados, Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago and St. Vincent and the Grenadines are all associated with the British monarch. Interestingly, several colonies claimed by the listed European countries above changed colony masters over the years. Example: Cayman Islands was once a colony of Spain, it is now associated with Britain. Anguilla and Barbuda was once colonies of France, now associated with Britain. Colonies of European countries within the Caribbean mirror the culture of their colonial leaders. The mixture of the varying cultures existing throughout the Caribbean became even more complicated as the years progressed. Slaves from Africa were introduced to several European colonies. The African slaves introduced on these islands brought with them their socio-cultural practices. Although for most part they were prohibited by their plantation owners from practicing their inherent cultures on the plantation, they found ingenious means of retaining their traditional culture. Eric Williams, 1970. The Caribbean is likening to a pepper pot soup pot. Every ingredient added a unique flavor to the present Caribbean multicultural experience. The uniqueness of this experience remains universal throughout the region based on the island's location and similarity in climate and historical factors. The experience of each country within the Caribbean region over the years has been unique. This is portrayed in the coat of arms, pledges, national dish and dress placed in higher regards by islands throughout the Caribbean region. Burton, 1985. It would be a correct statement to suggest that the socio-culture of the Caribbean is fragmented. Fragmented in the sense that is not the same throughout the entire region. A further ingredient of this multicultural pot was added during the early 20th century with the influence of the North American culture. The end result of this amalgamation of culture and diversity of language and ways of life could be referred to as a legacy of extreme political fragmentation and wide linguistic, ethnic and cultural diversity. Indeed, the diversity of culture throughout the Caribbean region remains complex even today. Today the Caribbean boasts an estimated population of 37 million people. The Caribbean also boasts 28 political entities. Of the 28 states within this region, 16 are independent states, and while the remaining 12 are dependent territories. Example: the Cayman Island remains a colony of Britain. 21 have populations of fewer than 1 million, and 9 have less than 100,000 inhabitants. Besides CARICOM and the ACS, most of the independent states also belong to the African Caribbean Pacific (ACP) group of countries under the Lomé Treaty with the European Union, EU, Ramsawak and UMRAW, 2005. Several of the smaller islands are also grouped into the Organization of East Caribbean States, OECS. English-speaking countries are also members of the, formerly British, Commonwealth of Nations. Dependent territories are associated with Britain, France, Netherlands, and the United States under a variety of constitutional arrangements. Puerto Rico, Aruba and the Netherlands Antilles have a high degree of internal autonomy. Martinique, Guadeloupe and French Guiana are politically integrated with metropolitan France, some 7,000 kilometers across the ocean. In between these two extremes are the British dependencies, which have locally elected administrations with a British governor. English is the official language of the majority of Caribbean states and territories, but Spanish is the language of the majority of the population of the Caribbean. This is due to the fact that the Spanish colonies/countries throughout the region have a population count which exceeds the total number of English personnel. French, Dutch, and several Creole languages are also spoken. Ethnically, people of European and African origin predominate in the Hispanic societies, whilst African and Asian descendants are the majority in the English, French and Dutch-speaking countries. There are also small Chinese, Jewish and Lebanese communities. The dawn of the Asian population through the Caribbean began after the end of the slave trade. After slavery, the exiting slaves who live on the islands through the Caribbean were freed. This freedom gave them the right to refuse to work on sugar plantations. Plantation owners still had to seek laborers to manage their plantations. With the refusal of the freed slaves to return to the plantation and work as free laborers, plantation owners went to Asia and agreed with laborers from this program to be involved in an indentureship program. This program saw the Asian workers, Chinese and Indians, working for a number of years and receiving a parcel of land as payment. This parcel of land was transferred to them. They were able to build their own houses and farm for themselves. Historically, fragmentation and diversity have been barriers to regional cooperation and have prevented the emergence of the region as a cohesive group in hemispheric and international relations. But there is a growing movement towards cooperation across political and language barriers in economic, environmental, and political matters. The positive aspect of cultural diversity is that it has been a source of survival skills for Caribbean people. It is also an asset in the tourist industry, in that visitors can sample the Caribbean versions of Latin, African and Asian cultures. Diversity should be seen as an asset whose potential can be more fully utilized in the future. The history of the Caribbean has contributed greatly to the cultural diversity which now exists throughout the Caribbean. Today, all countries within the Caribbean region exhibit a wide range of differences. These differences range from physical size, size of population, and level of per capita income. For example, Cuba, the most populous Caribbean country, has about 1,000 times the population of Anguilla. Guyana, with the greatest land area, is over 2,300 times larger than Aruba. Montserrat has over 120 times the per capita income of Haiti. Such differences make it difficult to generalize about economic and social conditions across the region as a whole. It's a given that the economic history of the Caribbean region have influenced greatly the socio-cultural nature of this region. The days of the plantation system and slavery have led to the region's dependence on agriculture as a main means of sustenance. The social condition the region now enjoys has been retained by our foreparents who developed coping strategies to deal with the harsh conditions met out to them whilst they were on the plantation. The creation of the Jankunyu festival, dance, music and patios are all ancestral heritage of our enslaved foreparents. The heavy dependence we have as a region on agriculture has resulted in many anomalies within our economical as well as social sphere. The location of the Caribbean in the tropics exposes agricultural crops to hurricanes and storms. The dependence of the population within this region on agriculture has resulted at times in the scarcity of staple provisions. This scarcity occurs as food supplies are destroyed by hurricanes and other natural disasters. The ability of the region to survive along other means does not exist substantially. The habit of being heavily dependent on colonial assistance or assistance from developed countries continues to grow. The cultural distaste for agriculture has been created by virtue of the nearly 500 years of slavery our foreparents endured. This has resulted many persons throughout the Caribbean has no interest in agriculture. Gilbert and Gugler, 1994. The socio-cultural of being independent permeate the Caribbean region. Regardless of this point of view, the cultural practice of cultivating large sugar-cane farms have remained in a few Caribbean islands today. The geographical location of these islands determines this choice and has inspired yearly decision to continue. The socio-cultural situation which exists within the Caribbean is now broadening with this economic view held firmly by the natives of the Caribbean. Poverty now has a conditional position within the Caribbean region. This situation has further created a unique socio-culture where each country within the region now seeks to manage this issue differently. This has created opportunity for an increase in drug trafficking, prostitution and human trafficking, all in an effort to stave off the social condition of poverty. In an effort to manage poverty amongst many families, many Caribbean nationals have opted to migrate to North America in search of a better life. This move has influenced how persons relate to each other. Many Caribbean nationals view this option as good and a means of social mobility. The influence of the North American culture has been further propelled with the introduction of cable television, internet and mobile phones. The American culture have impacted the Caribbean socialized culture so much, the people within the Caribbean region, looks to the United States for approval for their dance, music, dress and way of life. It is becoming difficult for many Caribbean countries to maintain a social cohesion. Many countries within the Caribbean region are so entrenched in their ethnic and social divisions the evolution of their cultural heritage seems impossible. Fullen, 2001. Example of this can be seen in Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. To agree to stave away from the evolution of their cultural heritage is regarded as antisocial behavior by many who wish to remain entrenched in their traditional values, mores and attitudes. On the other hand, many countries within the region have become rebellious to the developed countries like the United States. This rebellious attitude has led to an increase in illicit activities. This rebellious attitude has been spawned from the desire of countries like these wanting to control social, economical and cultural aspects of their society. The control of the above-listed variables within the region is many. Some ways in which developed countries have sought to control the socio-economical and cultural avenues of the Caribbean are as follows. 1. The suggestion of these countries, that Caribbean countries should make amendments to their constitution which accept sexual indifferences, in short the acceptance of lesbians and gays. Allowing the above-listed to have rights equal to every other citizen. They, developed countries, suggest that this mirrors a country which promotes human rights. Many Caribbean countries views this socio-cultural behavior hinges on religious intolerance. Another position in which Western influences, namely the United States, now seek to force the acceptance of many Caribbean countries is that of democracy. 2. Developed countries have also sought to determine the political will of the region. The United States during the Cold War made enemy of anyone who favored communism. To the United States, capitalism should be their favored choice. Within the region, Cuba was the only country with the assistance of Russia which withstood the threats of the West and opted to choose communism. Today, as a result of this choice, their economy has been barred from becoming involved with neighboring countries and the world. The cultural practices of Cuban people have remained inherent due to the rigid means of supervision by the Cuban government, limiting outside interference. This movement by the Cuban government have led to the United States blacklisting them, Cuba, as an economic partner for anyone throughout the world. The United States have sneakily undermining the culture of the Caribbean with the use of the mass media. 90% of the popular cable network stations are owned and operated by persons within the United States. The mass media, also including print media, have been diligently seeking approval of their socio-culture across the world. This can be observed in the movies, novels, music and the social sphere which is depicted on reality television programs. The acceptance of fashion, speech, and music are the major ways in which culture are influenced. Indeed, the Caribbean region's socio-cultural past, present and future hinges on how much the government accept or reject external influences. This is referred to as globalization. To a great extent the idea of Christianity is of a prejudicial viewpoint of a religious deity, another consequence of globalization. As was the experience of all of the Americas, of which the Caribbean is an integral and iconic part, the world's inhabitants, certainly in the Western world to begin with, must stand on seashores or on mountaintops, look across oceans and sing goodbye motherland, knowing that where one is, one must maintain their inherent culture. The belief system of the Africans of their God and worship should never be swiped as fable and be replaced with Western religion. The culture of religion encourages Christianity. Throughout the Caribbean the ancestral heritage favors several other religious deities. The inherent African socio-cultural belief into a religious being/deity is considered as aesthetic in nature and classical heresy fables by Western civilization. We have abandoned our cultural heritage and have adopted European in these narrow view popular and ethnic religious fables. The Caribbean and the Americas, in general, by their sheer output of artistic innovation have long challenged this. Examples of this rejection can be seen in the criminalization of obeah and Maoism by the British monarch during their colonization of the Caribbean region. In conclusion, the Caribbean region has a number of socio-cultural heritages, many of which have been gradually evolving to resemble developed countries. The idea of cultural retention seems simple, but is it in any way practical? Like Cuba, many Caribbean countries will have to rigidly monitor their media so as to maintain a virgin-like inherent culture. The Caribbean people are so resourceful that they have developed means of refracting the ideologies of the Western or developed countries. Regardless of external influence, several socio-cultural practices still exist within the Caribbean which is indigenous to this region. These include language, dance, reggae music, calypso, storytelling, nine nights, and the belief in a religious deity. The Caribbean is a unique region. It has a unique history, several languages and a common will which is to improve in its socio-economic and cultural sphere.